Hi, good day. I am Jubilin Lucernas and I will discuss about Chapter 2, Lesson 3 of Ethnocentrism and Relativism. But first, we will define what is ethnocentrism. So ethnocentrism is judging another culture solely by the values and standards of one's own culture. Ethnocentric individuals judge other groups relative to their own ethnic group or culture, especially with concern for language, behavior, customs, and religion. These ethnic distinctions and subdivisions serve to define each culture or ethnicity's unique cultural identity. In simple words, it is the evaluation of other cultures according to preconceptions originating in the standards and customs of one's own culture. So according to William G. Sumner, ethnocentrism is defined as the technical name for the view of things in which one's own group is the center of everything, and all others are scaled and rated with reference to it. He further characterized it as often leading to pride, vanity, beliefs of one's own group's superiority, and contempt of outsiders. He argued that ethnocentrism nourished a group's pride and vanity while looking on outsiders or outgroups with contempt, and that ethnocentrism is now recognized as a universal phenomenon experienced in all cultures. In the study of anthropology, ethnocentric are people born into a particular culture that grow up absorbing the values and behaviors of the culture will develop a worldview that considers their culture to be the norm. If people then experience other cultures that have different values and normal behaviors, they will find that the thought patterns appropriate to their birth culture are not appropriate for the new cultures. However, since people are accustomed to their birth culture, it can be difficult for them to see the behaviors of people from a different culture from the viewpoint of that culture rather than from their own. Examples of ethnocentrism include religious-centric constructs claiming a divine association like divine nation, one nation under God, God's own country, God's chosen people, and God's promised land. Next is cultural relativism. It is the principle that an individual person's belief and activities should be understood by others in terms of that individual's own culture. Cultural relativism is the ability to understand a culture on its own terms and not to make judgment using the standards of one's own culture. The goal of this is to promote understanding of cultural practices that are not typically part of one's own culture. It was established as accepted in anthropological research by Franz Boas in the first few decades of the 20th century, later popularized by his students. Cultural relativism was in part response to Western ethnocentrism. Ethnocentrism may take obvious forms in which one consciously believes that one's people's arts are the most beautiful, values the most virtuous, and believes the most truthful. Boas first articulated the idea in 1887 that civilization is not something absolute, but it is relative, and our ideas and conceptions are true only so far as our civilization goes. However, Boas did not coin the term. Franz Boas, originally trained in physics and geography, argued and thus one's culture may mediate and thus limit one's perception in less obvious ways. He understood culture to include not only certain tastes in food, art, and music, or beliefs about religion. He assumed a much broader notion of culture, defined as the totality of the mental and physical reactions and activities that characterize the behavior of the individuals composing a social group collectively and individually in relation to their natural environment, to other groups, to members of the group itself, and of each individual to himself. This understanding of culture confronts anthropologists with two problems. First, how to escape the unconscious band of one's own culture, which inevitable bias our perceptions of and reaction to the world. And the second, how to make sense of an unfamiliar culture. Generalization. Ethnocentrism is the tendency to assume that one's own culture and way of life represent the norm or are superior to all others, while cultural relativism, it is the viewing of people's behavior from a perspective of their own culture. And I will end my PowerPoint presentation with this quote. It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. Thank you.